So you support negotiating with a nation that says "Marg bar Amerika," death upon America. You're comfortable negotiating with a country that hates us.
I'm sorry, who do we negotiate? We only negotiate with countries that love us? Is that how negotiations work? Have you heard of the phrase diplomacy?
But diplomacy,
there is no negotiation with a country that actually agrees with you.
But
we negotiate with countries that disagree with us.
I totally get that. But for the most part, the countries we negotiate with that disagree with us, they don't say death upon Americans. Iran says death upon Americans, the top of the Iran. This is not even the people in the streets.
Who gives a fuck? So what?
So give them $150 billion? That's a valid concern. That's a valid question.
First of all, it's their money that we are releasing in exchange for removing nuclear weapons from Iran.
Patrick Bet David brought on Reza Aslan, a guest with a woke perspective, to discuss some controversial topics, and things quickly heated up. Reza went on the PBD podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel to promote his book, but instead, he found himself getting demolished by Patrick. The debate centered around negotiations with countries like Iran, which has openly expressed hostility toward the United States. Patrick called Reza out on his stance, particularly regarding Iran's death to America rhetoric and the nuclear deal. Reza tried to defend his position, but Patrick wasn't having it. Let's dive into this intense exchange, where Patrick Bet David challenges Reza Aslan's views and completely dismantles his arguments. Get ready for some hard-hitting points as Patrick exposes the flaws in negotiating with a country that openly hates the U.S.
I'm an expert in Iran, so I advise those groups. I have no loyalty or membership to NIAC. I'm not here to speak for NIAC.
To be fair, you don't advise the other side, though. You're strictly advising the progressive side. You're not advising...
100%.
Which they support the nuclear deal, which you support as well.
100% support the nuclear deal.
So you support negotiating with a nation that says "Marg bar Amerika," death upon America. You're comfortable negotiating with a country that hates us.
I'm sorry, who do we negotiate? We only negotiate with countries that love us? Is that how negotiations work? Have you heard of the phrase diplomacy?
But diplomacy,
there is no negotiation with a country that actually agrees with you. We negotiate with countries that disagree with us.
I totally get that. But for the most part, the countries we negotiate with that disagree with us, they don't say death upon Americans. Iran says death upon Americans, the top of the Iran. This is not even the people in the streets.
Who gives a fuck? So what?
So give them $150 billion? That's a valid concern. That's a valid question.
First of all, it's their money that we are releasing in exchange for removing nuclear weapons from Iran. How do you suggest we remove nuclear weapons from Iran, Patrick?
Okay, I have ideas for you. I can give it to you. Not to remove nuclear weapons. First of all, do you believe no matter whether we give them the money or not, they're not going to continue working on nuclear weapons?
They literally didn't. But, hold on. Nope. We're not going to move past this until we establish the facts. The JCPOA, which was negotiated by the United States, Russia, China, the Security Council, and Germany, which is extraordinary. The idea that those 5 countries came together, and the European Union, and agreed on anything, let alone agreed on this absolutely remarkable deal under the Obama administration to remove all the enriched uranium out of Iran. There is zero doubt that that worked. Zero. The IAEA came out in no uncertain terms and said, within 12 months of that deal being put in place, Iran no longer had the enriched uranium to create a nuclear bomb. Within 12 months...
You have to be naive to believe that.
Okay.
You have to be,
right.
but fair enough. Let's buy into the naivete and move forward.
Okay,
let's just say you're right. Let's say you're right.
Let's not believe the people on the ground who are actually monitoring the nuclear plants.
To believe somebody that believes in the values that they do, yes, I don't believe that.
I completely agree with Patrick Bet David on this. It's one thing to negotiate with a country that might not be our strongest ally. Maybe there's some bad blood or a shaky history. Those negotiations can still be reasonable, but negotiating with a country whose leadership openly uses the phrase "death to America" as a rallying cry, that's an entirely different story. They don't just disagree with us. They actively wish for our downfall. and that makes negotiations far more dangerous and questionable. As for Iran supposedly stopping the development of nuclear weapons, we've seen this story before. We've been lied to countless times by countries claiming they've halted nuclear programs, only for them to continue in secret. Believing Iran would genuinely stop its nuclear ambitions seems incredibly naive. When someone is that adamant that a country like Iran, which openly expresses hostility, is telling the truth about something as serious as nuclear weapons, it comes across as disingenuous. You either look like a shill trying to push an unrealistic narrative or someone desperately clinging to a flawed argument. And Patrick Bet David is about to expose that flawed reasoning in this debate.
But let me go to the next one and ask you the question. Let me go to the next one and ask you the question.
What's the alternative?
Let me go back to the next one and ask you the question. Okay. Your father was right about Khomeini. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your father was right. So do you think Iran, and I know this is going to be hard for you to answer this question, don't go Mossadegh. I'm purely talking Shah and the advancements we were making under Shah versus what happened to Iran under Khomeini, okay? If we had a choice between the two, this is not you can't say, well, I would choose this. I wouldn't choose either. If you had a choice between how Iran was during Shah's era versus Khomeini, which would you choose?
Neither.
I knew you were going to say that, but you can't say neither.
Fuck that.
You cannot say neither. How do you mean neither? How can you say neither? Be honest. I'm being serious with you.
You may literally have this idea about the Shah's age that is in your imagination.
I do not have an idea about Shah's age.
You don't remember the thousands of people that he slaughtered on the street, the tens of thousands of people who would disappear into education camps. We replaced one murderous regime with another murderous regime, and it's stupid to say which one would you prefer.
It's naive for you to say what you just said. You said since you've left Iran in 79 till today, Adam asked you a question. When's the last time you visited? You said 2005, before I became famous. You didn't use the word famous, but before I became known in a marketplace. Okay, you haven't gone back since. Under Shah, you could go back. This is not about saying one did it right or one did it wrong.
Is your question which is more beneficial to me or which is better for Iran?
It's, by the way, the Shah was more beneficial to the people. You're saying Khomeini is more beneficial to the people.
Fuck no, that's not what I said.
So the question I'm asking is,
literally said
what is more beneficial? You can't say neither, though.
You are telling me which murderous regime would you prefer? The murderous regime of the Shah or the murderous regime of the Ayatollah?
You cannot be that naive, though. You cannot be that naive. Listen, if you take it from that route, the Reza Shah Pahlavi, okay, and Iran, where they were, which, by the way, for me, an imperialist model.
Are you a Pahlavist?
I'm not an imperialist. My model would be more what we have in America. What I'm asking you, a simple question you can't answer. During Khomeini, millions of people died from other countries. Other innocent people died because of Khomeini's policies and his regime. This is not Reza Pahlavi's other people died because of his regime. You can't give that argument.
Okay.
For you to say that I'm going to choose both the same.
If what you want to do is a fun intellectual exercise in which you are saying, gun to my head, I can only pick the murderous regime of the Shah or the murderous regime of the Ayatollahs.
It's too different.
Which one would you want?
You cannot say.
I would say the murderous regime of the Shah.
Okay, so then...
Because you got a gun to my head.
Not because I got a gun to your head. Because logically, it makes sense to say right after Khomeini, you're probably not leaving Iran if Shah was still in Iran. Or not being in Iran. You probably would, and I would probably...
I'd be probably miserable.
I
wouldn't have rights.
I don't think so. I disagree. You would have chosen to leave to another country. You would have chosen to come to...
I think you've got a nostalgia for the days of the Shah.
I don't have a nostalgia.
Me a lot of like Make America Great Again.
But this to me takes you back to why Nayak gets the criticism that it does. Because for you, you're saying give $150 billion to those guys, to Iran. It's their money. It's their money anyways. But you're saying it's their money anyways.
No, you're putting words in my mouth.
Begu.
We have two options with Iran's nuclear program. Two options and nothing else. Two options, period.
We have a third option.
What's the third option?
I'll give you the third option.
Option one, we blow the shit out of it.
Okay.
Option two, we use negotiation and diplomacy. What's your third option?
Very simple. It's very simple what you do with option three. Option three is the same exact thing that happened in different nations. Iran is going through a potential revolution today?
Well, hold on. I want to make it clear.
Please.
I am talking about 2012. I am not talking about 2022. I have never said we should renegotiate the nuclear program now. You're asking me, did I support the JCPOA
Versus today.
today?
Well,
there's no country to negotiate.
Let me tell you.
But let me make sure
I'm glad you
before
clarified
Twitter
that.
loses its fucking
I'm
mind.
glad you clarified that.
I am not saying
Fair.
that
You're
we
going back
should
10
be
years.
negotiating
Fair.
now.
So then
Was it right in 2012? 100%.
let me
it
make
was
my
right.
point. Let me make my point on what I'm thinking. And I want to hear your rebuttal on this and your argument on this. For me, it's the following. Have you heard of John Perkins, the economic hitman guy, the author? He's a hardcore
right,
progressive.
yeah.
Very, very interesting guy. I had him on 2 times. I really like talking to that guy. And it's very interesting, his arguments, what they did, to cause nations to go down. Do you think the current model and the government today in Iran is good for its people and good for the world?
Fuck no.
Okay, fair. We're on the same page. So is it fair to say that if we can figure out a way to help the Iranian people, not the government, the Iranian people to cause a fall in Iran, that's probably a good, noble thing for us to do?
That has been my goal for 20 years.
Fantastic. Then if doing that, your mission of wanting to do that, which NIAC's mission is for the people, policy to help with the people, that doesn't align with the rulers and the president and the people that run Iran. You guys don't share a common value.
You disagree? You're wrong. You're absolutely
So you're
wrong.
telling me, the foreign minister Javad Zarif, like you're saying his ideal situation is to bring democracy to Iran?
No. What you're saying is, can we pursue policies in the United States to help the people of Iran? And have we been? My answer is we have not been. We have not. 40 years of blanket sanctions has not helped the people of Iran. It has only entrenched the government further. And there's reams of academic data that indicates that. The question is, does for instance, nuclear deal, the JCPOA in 2012, would that have helped the government or the people? And there is very good, real, meaningful arguments to be made that it would only help the government. I disagree, because there are much better arguments that it would only help people. Why? Goes back to your God, capitalism, the free market. The Iranian people live in an oppressive, murderous, theocratic regime. And as a part of American policy, we have decided that we're going to blanket sanction everyone in the hopes that eventually they'll rise up and take down their government.
No.
4 decades. 4 decades we've been doing that. Now, instead, the argument of the JCPOA was very simple. A, we get to get rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities without launching a war.
Giving them $150
without
billion.
without, again, I want to make sure that you understand that this isn't my 150 million or your 150 million. That's the only reason I said
It doesn't matter. You're strengthening them.
what you are doing.
You're strengthening their government.
It's not about the money that you give them.
It doesn't
it's about
get to the people.
liberalization.
You cannot
of
be that
the
naive
economy.
to think the money goes to the people.
I'm not talking about the money going to the people. What I am talking about is the policies that arise from the JCPOA, which requires the liberalization of Iran's economy. What the Iranian people
It's not
need.
going to happen.
What the Iranian people need
Yeah.
in order to actually succeed in bringing down their government is access to the free market, is access to the rest of the world.
By giving money to the
Revolutions-
government?
You are conflating two different things.
I'm not,
Listen
though.
to me. I'm not saying that the money in exchange for the nuclear weapons is what is going to free Iran. I am saying that the policies pursued by the JCPOA have, on top of it, the goal of economic liberalization in Iran, which is why I argued 10 years ago that Iran should be allowed into the World Trade Organization, because then it would have to actually pursue policies that require economic
You can't
liberalization.
negotiate with unreasonable people.
I fully agree with Patrick Bet David on this. Negotiating with a country that may not be our ally, might dislike us, or have some historical differences with us is one thing. But negotiating with a country that openly uses a phrase that literally translates to death to America, that's a whole different story. It's clear they actually want America to fall. and that's a major difference when it comes to negotiations. Secondly, when it comes to the issue of stopping nuclear development, we've been deceived too many times by countries claiming they aren't working on nukes anymore. It's naive to think that Iran would genuinely halt its nuclear ambitions. When you're so adamant that a country like Iran is being truthful about such a critical issue, it's hard not to see you as a shill or someone trying to push an idea that doesn't hold up logically. Patrick Bet-David rightly challenges him on this. This man also needs to realize that the funds from the deal didn't go to the Iranian people. It went straight to the government. Patrick Bet-David makes a valid point here, highlighting the glaring flaw in thinking that releasing those billions would somehow help ordinary Iranians. In reality, it's just empowering the oppressive regime. It's frustrating to see someone so out of touch with the actual impact of these decisions. Let me know in the comments if you agree with Patrick on this. Now, while I agree with Patrick on many points, I do disagree with him on one thing. You have to negotiate with anyone willing to sit down at the table. Diplomacy is all about engaging in dialogue, even with adversaries. Breaking an agreement only leads to more dangerous consequences, closing the door on any potential progress. Whether we like it or not, cutting off negotiations could escalate tensions further. Let me know in the comments where you stand. Do you think negotiation is the right path, or do you side with Patrick on this? Lastly, it's clear that this guy is flustered. I don't understand why people come on shows to promote their books and then lose their cool when someone challenges their ideas. If you're going to get this rattled, it might be better to avoid the show altogether because it makes you look unprepared. In this case, he's jumping around in his arguments, shifting timelines, and constantly cutting Patrick off. It's obvious he's struggling to keep his composure, and it doesn't reflect well on him. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, but to me, it just comes across as a bad look.